So I just want to introduce them really quick. This is David Calhoun from Morse Manning and Martin, Gordon Rogers from Vernon Bridge Ventures, Spence McClellan from Norman Mosley Partners, Steve Ty from Croft and Bender, and Mitchell Kopelman from Habeth, Arroghetti and Wind. David was our past 2010 selection committee chair last year, and Steve Ty has taken on the job this year. So we're very fortunate to hear from them. They've all been huge sponsors and supporters of Venture Atlanta since day one. So definitely listen to their great advice.
Great, thanks and welcome. Great job, entrepreneurs. It is terrific to see success stories up here, and we put a lot of time and effort into Venture Atlanta. This whole group, we're all passionate about seeing entrepreneurs succeed in Atlanta and the Southeast, so it is a wonderful thing to see that. As Allison mentioned, my name is David Calhoun. I'm a partner in the corporate group at Morse Manning & Martin, where my focus is entirely on technology and technology-enabled companies, representing venture-backed companies looking for venture capital, mergers and acquisitions, public and private financings. And so it's a world that I spend a lot of time in. It's a world that I'm passionate about seeing success, so it's great to see. What I'll do is I'll ask each of the panelists to give a quick introduction of themselves, what they do, and then we'll start talking about Venture Atlanta again. A lot of interest out there about how do you get in it. Everybody here has been involved in the selection committee. As Allison mentioned, I chaired it last year. Steve chairs it this year, so he's the guy you need to sit and talk to today, certainly. I am certain, I know I'll be actively involved in it. My bet is that everybody on this panel will be actively involved in the selection process this year. And so any questions you have, we're happy to answer those and help out as best we can. So Gordon, why don't I start with you? If you can give a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Sure, yeah, Gordon Rogers, early stage angel investor, work with my own personal investments tend to be in the digital media, educational technology, and gaming space. But I've done angel work for a number of years in the Atlanta community, and involved as part of the selection committee for Venture Atlanta for the last couple of years. And I'm just going to take a second to plug another organization that's going on right now. TIE Atlanta is currently having the second day of its Vista conference, and I've just been authorized to invite all of you to hear Tim Draper, who's speaking at 10 o'clock, who's one of the granddaddy VCs. Free invitation, you're on my dime, so if you want to come, you got to be up there at 10 o'clock right after this. It's at Cobb Galleria.
Is Tim going to sing?
Tim he may sing, he may bring his bull, I don't know what he's going to do, but he's always entertaining, and of course, if you haven't heard of him, he's helped start a couple of little companies like Yahoo and Skype, so he's got a couple of successes under his belt. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Startup Angel is my handle, so I'm always tweeting out things like this, and please feel free to follow me on that, and come on up to Cobb Galleria after this if you want. Thanks,
Spence.
Yeah, if you see me yawning, they had the gala last night,
Right.
and those Indian Americans know how to party. That was a late night.
Great curry dinner.
great. At any rate, again, Spence McClellan from Nora Mosley. We're a venture capital firm here in Atlanta, focused in technology and healthcare. Been around for a long time, so it's the firm has, not me. But we're very supportive of Venture Atlanta. Since day one, I think Alan Mosley, one of my partners, has been involved in it, and I'm currently serving on the board. Also was on the selection committee with a couple of these guys last year, so excited to be here, and hopefully we can answer some questions.
And I'm Steve Ty with Croft and Bender. We're a investment banking and private equity firm. We do two things: merger and acquisition advisory work for companies, as well as helping them raise primarily growth equity out to a national audience of VCs and private equity groups. And then we have our own fund, which invests in companies. So we don't take on a deal to help a company raise capital unless we're excited enough about it to invest our own money.
Mitchell.
Since I already told you a little bit about myself, I'll just throw in 30 seconds on the new state of Georgia Angel Tax Credit. If you've heard about it, great. If you haven't, if you go to our website and look at my bio, there's an article all about the Georgia Angel Tax Credit. The most important thing to recognize is there's an application that you have to file with the state and get it back approved by the state in order for an investor to invest in your company and also be eligible for the angel tax credit. So if you're thinking of raising angel money and haven't done it yet, send in the application. If you need help with it, give me a call, shoot me an email, and get that in ASAP so it doesn't hold up a closing of angel money.
Great, thanks. So you've got a mix. So when time for Q&A, interrupt any time if you got questions, but it's a good mix of folks up here from different industries that are all in contact with the technology entrepreneur industry. So feel free to ask. So let's start off. Let's talk about the VC market in general, and then we'll shift to Venture Atlanta. But ask the panel real quickly, what are you seeing out there? Is the market, is it good, bad? How easy is it to raise money? Let's start with venture capitalists. And Spence, you want to?
All right,
go
sure,
first?
yeah. I think it's getting better. I think 2 years ago it was pretty slow. And if you think back to kind of what fuels all of this, it's our investors, so limited partners, pension funds, university endowments, things like that are funding venture capital funds that then fund startup companies. And I think given some of the stock market issues and people looking for liquidity, venture capital, angel investing obviously is a very illiquid investment. You're putting money into a company that you may not get back for 5, 7, 10, 12 years. There was if ever.
That's another story.
Yeah, that's stays positive.
The dark side, right?
I think there was a lot of backlash against venture as an asset class for that very reason. I think now that so the way you get your money out is obviously through an exit, so an IPO or a merger and acquisition, which Steve helps with that side of things. But that activity has been pretty slow. People are all pretty aware that the IPO market's been struggling. So that kind of door to liquidity has been closed for the most part. It's starting to pick up a little bit, but nothing like we've seen in the past. But the M&A environment is improving. I think that transactions are coming up. Transaction sizes still aren't quite where we'd like to see them, but given that the M&A market's opening up, we're starting to see some exits. Even in our own portfolio, we've had a couple of companies that have sold in the last 12 months, and hopefully 4 or 5 more that are going to come in the next few months. So I think firms are starting to see portfolio companies realize some liquidity, which we can then return back to our investors, and that lets them put money back into us. So it's a vicious cycle, but that's how it all works, for better or worse. So the thought is that you get liquidity, there's money that's back out there to invest in startup companies. And at the same time, we've probably seen more innovation and entrepreneurial activity here in Atlanta and around the Southeast, which is where we focus, than in the last 5 years. Some of that's probably a function of the shrinking economy and people kind of taking advantage or being forced to kind of go out and start that dream. But honestly, there's a lot of just innovation going on in general. There's the mobility wave, clean tech, social media. There's a lot of things going on right now. So our view would be, you got all this great innovation going on, a lot of entrepreneurs out there, liquidity coming on. That kind of creates a perfect storm for investing. So we're hoping this is actually going to end up being a very fruitful time to invest in venture capital.
Gordon, how about you? You see?
Certainly in the angel world that I'm involved in, just in the last 6 to 9 months, I've seen a lot more deals in that period than say the whole year. If you look at 2009 and most of 2010, it was kind of a nuclear winter.
Yeah, we don't talk about it. 09 and 10, right?
That's try and
I'll let Tim
purge
take
that
that.
from our memory.
Yeah.
But just to pick up on what Spence said, there's a trickle down there. Most people have probably heard about the successful acquisition, Dell SecureWorks, and if you haven't all read Lance Weatherby's blog, you should read it continuously. But the one that he posted about a week ago, he talked about the math from the exits that the core team had of that SecureWorks. There's now enough money for them to go off and spawn a lot of new startup companies. They have the wherewithal, presumably the drive and the interest. And so you're going to start, that's where the angel money comes from. It has to come out, start at that end, and then it trickles down, and eventually folks like you and us will benefit. So we need more of those exits, but we hadn't seen any for some time. And I think that SecureWorks was a huge win, especially for you guys.
That helps, yeah.
Definitely. Steve, what are you seeing?
Just, same thing. Spence and Gordon touched on. Not much to add there, other than I'll say, world of difference between now and probably a year ago when we're one more year removed from, everybody's lives flashing before their eyes, and we are seeing that cycle of M&A very active, which is, I think, in the next 6 to 12 months going to create a lot of liquidity that can then be reinvested in the community. One of the challenges with Atlanta on the angel side has been the focus on real estate, which is still illiquid. So I don't see that problem being solved anytime soon. But the angel groups that are corporate focused, I think, are getting very organized and more institutional in nature. ATA and others, to where they're creating good opportunities for entrepreneurs because it's becoming more focused in helping entrepreneurs with programs like Venture Atlanta and Cap Venture and others be focused and chase dreams that can actually become realities.
Mitchell, your clients, are they busy?
I will say that our clients from real early stage to those that are growing are having great successes raising capital. There is money out there. When I hear people say, naysayers, oh, there's not money, or there's not money in Atlanta, or there's not money in the Southeast, I really go to them and say, that's not the case. Maybe you haven't found the person that's the right fit for you. It's sort of like someone that wants to get married that just hasn't met that right person yet. But there is money out there. I think I see it at all levels, from early angel to growth capital and to buyout. So we've been seeing a lot of M&A activity, a lot of early stage investing and later stage investing, and just a matter of getting in front of the right people, because from my perspective, the money's on the sidelines, and we have some venture funds that we represent, and they are very active making investments and looking at a lot of deals.
And I think if you look at it this time versus last year, if you look at the 09 Venture Atlanta group versus the 2010 Venture Atlanta group, Allison, you have the statistics, but how many of the Venture Atlanta 2010 companies have now been funded 6 months later?
Already 7 out of 20, have already,
That's pretty
within a
remarkable.
few months, been funded, which is
I think you
huge.
just announced another one yesterday.
Scout Mob, yeah.
Scout Mob, yeah.
And there is money out there. I can't stress enough the tie-in between the M&A activity and the IPO activity. That gets the engine going. It makes people invest. And so when you see, even if you're an entrepreneur with a new startup and your exit's of 5-6 years away or more, when you see this M&A activity or this IPO activity, that is great news for the market, because it changes the psychology. It creates wealth for people that will put money back to work. It gets more funds investing into the venture funds because they've had good exit events. The IPO activity, I'll note on that you see a lot more of it. There's more talk of it, but what you're generally seeing are the larger IPOs. You talk about a Facebook. Well, there are only a handful of Facebook. Sure, they could go public anytime they want to. What we look out for are the smaller companies. The market that you had in the late 90s, early 2000s with the smaller IPOs, you weren't seeing a whole lot of those. And now you're starting to see some of those. In fact, I was at a meeting last night where a private equity firm presented, and he mentioned a local company, which I love because we did the deal. SideQuest did a $35-40 million IPO. Well, until that deal, you weren't seeing a whole lot of those, and that's been very successful. And so you're hoping that feeds what would become more of a traditional venture-backed IPO going forward, and so we keep our fingers crossed on that. Given that we're going to run short on time, let's shift back to Venture Atlanta. I think that's why people are here. Let's talk about how do you get in, how do you present. Again, you got the selection committee here. Let's throw the question out to the group. Steve, you're chairing it this year. I'll throw it out to you, but there's an application process. We got 150 plus applications last year. There were 40 slots, I think. There were 20 on the main stage, we called it. There were 25 on the early stage showcase. We're going to do it a little differently this year, but those are the basic numbers. So there are a lot of applications that we see. Obviously, strong companies out there, we can't pick every one. So how do you make sure you're there? Steve, you want to?
Yeah, so and Allison can get into the mechanics of the application process, which call for companies will happen, next month?
Yeah.
Towards the end of next month. But as far as what makes a presentable Venture Atlanta company, I think it's a good mix of 4 different things. Revenue is certainly at the top of the list. Having great ideas. We get 150 great ideas. Most of them are great ideas. But actually showing the revenue traction and showing, that customers are buying it, dogs are eating the dog food, and you're able to show it, preferably on a recurring basis. But you've got customers who are validating your product out there. That's certainly one of them. Large market opportunity. The biggest turnoffs for a lot of VCs is is what's the total addressable market? And we've seen people in the past who've had struggled with that. There's a group last year that could not really answer that question succinctly. So figure out what is your real addressable market. Don't say it's the whole world of everything that's spent on a certain niche or vertical, but what is your real addressable market and how big can you really be? And so that's the second one. The management team is critical too. So nobody can do this alone. Oftentimes the earlier the management team or the more unproven the management team, and by that I mean if you haven't grown a company to a couple $100 million and sold it, then you're going to have more traction than a guy who has. So we may have some earlier stage companies presenting at Venture Atlanta, but if they're there, then they're guys who've already created big home runs and know how to do it. And so having not only you but surrounding yourself with people who complement your talents and your skill sets not only help you as a company but will help you from a Venture Atlanta perspective. And then the differentiated product and service. I mean, it's got to be something that's different. That's different from anything anybody else is doing. The old term is people like to see painkillers, not vitamins. You really need to be solving a problem. You really need to be hitting a pain point for folks rather than just something that's an add-on. So those are kind of the four criteria I'd see as being critical to address.
Spence, you got anything more to add to that? Or?
The only thing I'll add is, and this is to kind of Bart's comment on the value of quote unquote service providers. I mean, for better or worse, we do also look at that left-hand column that shows what accounting firm you're working for, what legal services you're using, because it's frankly a good reference point for us. I mean, we're all part of this community, and so the ability to say, hey, David's working with this company. I haven't heard of him yet, but that does kind of provide some credibility and gives you, hey, David, by the way, I just read this executive summary of one of 150 companies. What's their story? And it's actually a very helpful way for us to sort through the applications. So, again, I would just encourage you to get out there and meet as many folks as you can, whether they have money or whether they're helping you connect with money or whether they're helping you with other parts of your business. So.
Yeah, having somebody that knows you on the selection committee has proven to be valuable because they can go beyond the executive summary.
And Braves tickets too.
And
Also helps. Box, preferably.
I was just going to add that sending flowers and chocolates to Allison can really.
No one's done that yet, so
Mitchell, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you haven't submitted an executive summary like this before, the application is looking for a one-page, two-page executive summary. And not a lot of people are used to doing that, just like you're not used to getting up and talking about your company in 6 minutes. So go to your advisors. If we're, come to me or Susan, anybody here, and say, hey, look at my executive summary before I submit it, and we'll critique that and give you advice to help you and guide you. And we may tell you, you're probably better suited for the showcase than you are for the presentation. But we'll guide you and give you some advice of things that maybe you ought to explain that a little better or differently than the way you have it in your initial draft. So have someone else look at it that's experienced, and preferably someone that's involved in Venture Atlanta.
And we do have a template that'll be on the website, so we really want you to use that and to not submit a 60-page PowerPoint. I cannot stress that enough, because if you do, it will get sent right back to you and asked to resubmit it. So.
You got a question?
Yeah, I forget your name, but you mentioned revenue. So I'm just wondering, are you looking for a certain amount of revenue, or would you look at like a percentage? So like, let's say if you have a web application with X number of users and there's a certain percentage of revenue, so if that number grows, then the percentage would grow. Is that something you'd look at, or do you usually look for a certain amount?
Well, there's not the magic amount of revenue. It all factors into that mix of different things we look for. But what we're looking for are companies that have proven what they're doing. Okay. So it's one thing to say we've given it away for free to 100,000 people. What's the stickiness of that? Well, these guys are all willing to pay $20 a month or whatever it might be. To then say, okay, I'm going to take this from a $1 million, $2 million company to a $100 million company, and this is how I'm going to go do it. It validates that story more and helps differentiate you from others who may have great ideas, but we may not be experts in your specific vertical niche, so we have no way to assess are people really going to adopt this until you're able to tell us that you can adopt it.
I'm going to challenge you, Steve. So let's say I'm got this great social media application. Maybe it was called Facebook at some point. They had no revenue, but 500,000 folks that were using it. I guess so users could be important even though there's no revenue, depending. I mean, not just that people have downloaded the app, but what if you have a high volume of active users? I would think that would be something we would consider.
Hopefully you will have figured out a way to monetize those through advertising or through other ways. And you may be a good fit for the early stage showcase. I mean, I'm talking more about the presenting main stage companies, but there are plenty of great companies with very little or no revenue that present at the early stage showcase that we're going to pick to have their moment on stage.
There's no bright line. It's you could be pre-revenue in theory and have the management team that's knocked it out of the park 3 times before, and they make it the main stage. But there's some distinguishing factor there. You can be pre-revenue or low revenue, strong model, and get early stage, which is a great platform. And so it depends on what it looks like and whether you can sell these guys,
Hey, no revenue, but a great leader that's
Right.
been there, done that before, is going to get a
It helps,
presentation
right.
slot.
That's right.
Too. So.
And I would just reiterate what Allison said. I almost have a cardinal rule is, how about that? It's no PowerPoints. And my other cardinal rule is show, don't tell. So instead of investing all the time in making a great pitch deck, show us a prototype. It does not take a lot of effort and expense these days to even build a wireframe. And show, I'd much rather see a wireframe and then a couple of lines on how this thing is going to go viral. That's more important than actually showing revenue because we can judge the potential of that. But what we're looking at, we're betting on the jockey. And if you can show us you can build this prototype and then bring it to market, we'll put our faith in you.
And just to pound on that, I mean, the ability in these 2 pages to use the verbs have and are as opposed to will goes a long way. So we have a prototype, we have a early pilot customer, we are delivering services to this guy versus we will build this, we will sell to this.
we have 20 million in revenue helps too. And
Well,
That's put that in the first line. Yeah, that's right.
Question in the back?
Yeah, for the 110 people that get turned down every year, you folks actually sit with them and say, hey, this is why we turned you down, and give them some advice, or is it just a no?
It's
what actually happens there?
I wish we had the time for everyone to get that, and maybe at some point we could get there. What we do is we do let people know that they got turned down. We have a great feedback tool in place that the selection committee actually goes through and gives criteria of how they rated each company. So after the once a company if they get turned down, I actually will then offer to them, hey, if you'd like to know why you got turned down, I can give you some of the feedback from the selection committee. And then there's always people on the committee that are willing to go, hey, yes, I mean if there's an entrepreneur that's just like, hey, can you just help me? Just like Bart said, Dan and Harris, there's a lot of people out there ready to help you and be there for you. But do we one-on-one sit down with everybody? No. What we encourage you to do though is to still attend the event. So we offer discounts to the entrepreneurs for $250 to come to the full 2 days, to be a part of it, to experience it, and to then go, okay, this is what I need to do to get there next year.
And I'd be happy to sit down with anybody who emailed me or called me and said, hey, I got turned down, I want to understand better, how I can
Absolutely.
improve my business to be there next year. I think any of us would.
Yeah, and there's about 20 people on the selection committee, so I'm sure there's a lot of people that you guys could, and again, these are experts in this, so.
And again, it's helpful to have a proponent. It's not necessary, but somebody that can describe the business, and if you've got one, that's a natural person to call and say, what happened. You might not like the answer, but they'll at least hopefully be honest with you.
You talked about the submission was an executive summary of 1 or 2 pages. Is there a secondary process? I mean, do you shortlist from 150 down to 50 and then meet or talk or ask for additional information, or is it just 2-page executive summary, yay or nay, and then you move on?
There could be some follow-up, but generally speaking, because of the volume, we literally go through, and we go through as they come in. There's they roll in, although we tend to get a lot more in the last week of the deadline. It
The week
doesn't,
after the deadline.
you're not gaining advantage by doing it earlier, just making our lives a lot easier by doing it earlier. There's essentially a loose grading system that we've used in the past where we'll go through and assign a grade, or say in many cases we don't know much about this company and assign somebody on the committee to go find out more about it. And so it's not, I guess it's official committee action, but if there's not enough information and it looks like an intriguing story, then we will take the step of asking somebody, usually whoever knows them, to go out and find out more information to bring back to the committee the next time. And we were meeting on a weekly basis in person, going through the stack. I mean, I had big notebooks of applications, so it's a time-consuming, important process that we go through. But you do, if your executive summary doesn't tell a story that makes us interested, you're not going to get. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that. But if there's interest there created, just not enough information, then we will follow up.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it may be important to reach out to us beforehand. Sort of if we've sat down and I can say you see this in the 2-page summary, but let me tell you kind of the broader picture of what these guys are addressing, and then it certainly can help and provide some context during our meetings. And
it's a very broad committee, so the chance of somebody on that committee not knowing who you are is not really high. And it tends to be really early stage companies that may not have hit the radar yet. But I assume you'll publish the list of who's on the committee.
Oh, yeah, the list will be on the website, and we get ATDC very involved as well. So we've got, Lance Weatherby and different people from ATDC, and this year we're working more with the ATA, and Mike Eckert will have some of his team on the committee. So, I mean, I'm very fortunate. We have a fantastic selection committee every year.
And so if you don't know anybody on it, close your eyes and point and make a phone call, and I guarantee any of us would be happy to take you to lunch, breakfast, and hear your story. Any other questions? Well, I think the 9 o'clock hour is upon us, so
It is.
no more questions. Let's call it a day.